everyone, welcome to day 3 of our journalistic writing unit. In today's video you are going to be doing guided reading, SPAG and English. So for today you are going to need chapter 3 of your purple mash text, chapter 3 of your multiple choice questions, the to-do bit, an exercise book or line paper, a pen, a pencil, a ruler, and tons of enthusiasm. So today is Friday the 1st of May 2020, so we have started a new month. We are going to start with our guided reading task, and the learning intention is to use evidence from the text to support your answer. So pause the video here, write the date, write the LI, and underline please. Right, so all of you have done really well on your comprehension so far, and it's lovely to see so many of you taking on board all the tips I'm giving you on how to structure your answers. So keep it up. It means you're watching the videos and you're really taking in all of the teaching, and you're learning how to structure those answers. So your first task is to read chapter 3 and complete the multiple choice question to do. And lots of you are getting 5 out of 5, so you are reading the text really carefully, so that's really good. So I want you to pause the video here, go ahead and read chapter 3 and do the to do and submit it, and then let me know how you got on. Okay, so now we are going to move on to our open-ended question task, which is on the next slide. So this is our longer comprehension task, and it is to do with the chapter. We now have met another character, and we are looking at how eventually all of those characters are going to move in, kind of join together. I'm hoping, I haven't read the story that far yet, but I'm hoping that they all come together at some point. So let's look through the questions. You have 5 questions there, and I want you to answer them in full sentences. I want you to use evidence from the text to support your answers and have the best go that you can. Remember, all the answers are in the text, so if you need to refer back, you can do that. When you are done, please make sure you have your marking pens at the ready, and we will move on to go through the answers. So pause the video here and do those questions for me the best that you can. Okay, so let's move on to the answers. Number 1, look at the first sentence of the chapter. How do you know that George has delivered meat to Mrs. Barnes before? So we know that George is a delivery boy, and although he wanted to have a pony and trap, which is basically like a little carriage that a pony leads and he can sit on that, he's actually just been given a little like wheelbarrow type of thing where he has to just roll that around to deliver the meat. So it must be quite tiring for him. So he has been given the job of delivering meat to Mrs. Barnes. So the word they use in the story is usual. So it is with the usual order. So that means that he has been there before. Number 2, what do George, Ethel and Marcus all have in common? So these are all characters from the first 3 chapters, and the thing they have in common is they are huge fans of Miss Violet Lane, the celebrity. Okay. Number 3, he had taken a shortcut but had somehow got caught up in a crowd which was sweeping him along towards Parliament Square. What does the word sweeping tell you about the way that George was moving in the crowd? So it was as if he had no control of his own movement, almost like he was lifted up by the crowd and taken in the direction that they were going in. So he wasn't actually able to move himself. And that's it. The author wants to show you how busy that area actually was. Number 4, he could hardly see over the sea of hats that jostled and bobbed along. Why do you think that the author used the word see in this sentence? So for me, the first thing I looked at was the word bobbed. When something bobs along, it's usually a boat that's in the water and it's kind of rocking side to side and gently moving along the water. Also, the sea of hats suggests, like the sea, is almost, when you're standing in the seafront or on the beach and you're looking in front of you, it's almost like the sea is never ending. So in the same way, the hats were never ending. There were so many people that he just couldn't see the end of it. Question 5. Based on what George had seen and heard, do you think he is in support of the suffragettes or against them? So again, this is your kind of way that you have taken what George has seen on board. So it's the way that you have perceived the text. So for me, I think that he is against them as, number one, he struggled to get through the huge crowds and he saw the gentleman that was also getting very annoyed. And also he saw the damage when a brick was thrown through the window. So he saw that there was damage being caused by the suffragettes. So they were probably troublemakers, is what he might have think they were. So I think that he was against them. You might think he's in support of them. Maybe you think he feels sorry for them because it was the boss's wife that was being arrested. And maybe he kind of felt that these people were not being listened to and he was quite angry about it. So it depends on your perception, but when you answer this question, you need to make sure you're using evidence from the text to support your answer. Okay, so tick if you've got them right, correct them if you haven't, or you wanted to add in a few more words or examples, you can do that now as well. Let us know how you got on the Purple Mash blog and email. Send us a picture of your work. And hopefully you've all done really well. Okay, so we're going to now move on to our SPAG part of the lesson. And we are looking at first, second and third person narrative. So please, can you pause the video here and write the title for the SPAG lesson for today and underline. Okay, so when writing stories or newspaper articles, you can write using different narrative voices. It is important to know the difference between them, as some styles of writing need a certain narrative voice. So for example, when you're writing a diary, you will always use the first person, I. And if you're writing a story, you might switch between first person and third person. You might use third person all the way through. So it's really vital that you know the difference between the different narrative voices. So we're going to start with first person narration. If writing a story in the first person, write as though you are a character inside the story. Describe how you feel and what you are doing or have done. Use the pronoun I. Please remember it is a capital I, not a small I, a capital. I've seen a few errors on some of your work you've submitted, so please make sure you're using the right pronoun there, capital I. So the example there is, last year I went to Spain with my family. I loved it. Okay, and there's other pronouns there that you can use. My, me, mine, we, our, ours, and us. So if you want to, you can pause the video here and make some notes from this screen. If you want to, and I would suggest you do, maybe write down the other pronouns that you can use in the first person, just so that you have a list which will be very good for your reference in future. Okay, second person. So this time we are talking to the reader and using the pronoun you. So a lot of non-fiction uses second person, especially persuasive writing. Advertising uses you because you want to relate to the reader and engage them. Okay, instructions also use you as well. Fiction texts do use you, but not as often. Okay, so an example, before you begin, make sure that you have all of the tools listed above. So I will use you in this video quite a bit because I'm talking to you through the screen and trying to teach you the best I can. So other pronouns that are used in the second person are you and yours. So again, you can stop here, pause, and maybe write down the different types of pronouns that are used in second person. Okay, third person pronoun. If you're writing in the third person, you write about other people or characters. So you're using the character's name or pronouns such as he, she, and they. So for example, Michelle sped off at top speed and was soon in first place. She couldn't believe that she was going to win. Okay, and other pronouns used in the third person is her or hers, his, and theirs. Remember, look at the spelling of theirs. It is theirs that belongs to someone, not talking about the positional there, which is T-H-E-R-E. So remember the difference between the two. So again, you can pause the video here and make those notes that you need. Okay, so now this is your task. I want you to copy these sentences in your books and next to it to write whether they have used first, second or third person narration. So write them clearly and next to them just write down first, second or third. Pause the video here and we are going to go through the answers very shortly. Okay, how did you get on? Let's have a look. So the first one, Sophie was going to the cinema to meet her friends, is written in the third person because we're using the word Sophie. We're talking about somebody else, a different character. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was incredible. Obviously, we're using I, so we're using the first person. Where shall we go now? Wondered Tim and Holly as they sat in their car. So third person there because we're referring to Tim and Holly as separate characters. Do you believe in ghosts? Well, after reading this story, you will. We've got you there, so we're talking to the reader and we're using second person. As I walked into my new school, my stomach churned and my hands began to shake. Again, we're using I and my, first person pronouns there. And the last one, are you an early bird or are you a night owl? Again, we're using you, second person. Often, second person is used for rhetorical questions. Okay. And the second task for this is I want you to have a go at rewriting this passage, changing the first person pronouns into third person. Okay, so write this down in your books and see what you can do. I'm hopeful that you'll get them all right. We're going to go through the answers once you have finished. So pause the video here, copy this into your books, and I will see you in a minute. Okay, hope you didn't find that too difficult. So as you can see, we've changed the pronouns. So Mr. Craver looked at Sarah and said, who's picking you up from school, Sarah? So Sarah is changed from me to Sarah. So me was the first person, Sarah is third person. I'm not sure, Sarah replied nervously. Instead of I, we're now Sarah. She was worried that her mum would be late and that she would have to stay behind with him. So we've changed I to she and my to her. Okay, and as you can go through, you'll see the changes. So just tick the ones that you have got right. Now I'm hoping you got all of that right, and I want you to let me know by sending me a message on the Year 6 blog on Purple Mash or sending us an email at the Year 6 email address. Well done. Okay, and finally we're moving on to our English part of our lesson. So again, I want you to write the new LI to be able to identify the features of a newspaper report. And I want you to underline that. So please pause the video here and write that LI in your book. So your success criteria for today, you don't need to copy this down. I can understand the features and find them in the text, and I can state whether they're used effectively or not. Okay, so before we begin to write in a new genre of text, it is important that we understand the features of it. Remember, it is the features of that style of writing that help us distinguish between them. For example, the features of a narrative, such as opening, build-up and climax, would be very different to the features of a report, where we have to use formal language and third-person narrative voice. So remember, when we've done all of our different texts in school, we've always had a list, a success criteria list of features that we need to include in our writing, and they're all very, very different. But that helps lend itself to telling us what style of writing it is as well. Okay, there are a range of features that we must use for a newspaper article. So you might remember some from the autumn term, and you might know some because you're reading newspapers a lot at home and you kind of have a good understanding of it, which is brilliant. So this will kind of be like a recap for you as well. Okay, so we're going to go through the list now of different features, and we will then do a little task where you need to identify the features. Okay, so the first feature I have on my list is a headline. So this is the title of the story or the article and may contain a pun, which is a play on words, and that is only if the story lends itself to being slightly humorous. It needs to engage the reader and make them want to read further. So if you can see in that picture there where Boris Johnson has come out of hospital after having the virus, and thankfully he is fine. And the pun on that is, now that really is a Good Friday, because he came out on Good Friday, the Easter Friday, and it's normally called Good Friday. So there's a play on words there, that it's good that he came out of hospital on that day. Okay, the byline we need to have is the name of the journalist that has written the report, and it must be at the top of the article. Now, it's very small on this picture, but actually there is a line. If you can see my mouse there pointing, it is the line there that's underlined that tells you the name of the person that has written the article. Very, very important that that name is there. You might want to put a photo in your story, and it helps to engage the reader, helps people to know what the person looks like. Sometimes the article might be related to a picture or an image or something that's happened, and having the photo there is really, really useful. And a caption is something that goes with the photo. So a caption, remember, explains what's happening in that photo and it provides more information. So we're going to start with our lead paragraph, which is our first main paragraph of our article. And it has to contain the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, and H, which is how. So who is this article about? What happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen? Why did it happen? And how. Now, that information needs to be quite brief, and it needs to just stick to the facts. You don't need to put any opinions, any quotes, anything. All you're doing is just a very quick summary of the story, and it's kind of the bit of the story that if people are reading the article, they'll read that and they'll get information, and if they think it interests them, then they'll continue to read further. The main part of the text is now the full details of the story, so you're developing it a little bit more, adding more detail. Okay, your main body might contain 1 or 2 paragraphs that are developing the story further. Remember, again, you're still talking about facts, not personal opinions, and generally it should be in a chronological order, okay, in order of how it happened. And our last paragraph will sum up the story and bring it up to date. So it might, if it's an appeal for information by the police, then you might want to put that in there, and you will also put quotes in there. I remember telling a lot of the children in my class the reason why articles are set out in this way is when the editors are editing their newspaper and they want to place it all on the page, if they feel the article is too long, they can cut off from the bottom and work their way up. So the more important information should be at the top, and then slowly the importance of that information will go down. So if they wanted to cut the quotes out, they could do that quite easily. Okay, direct quotes. So it's really important to have quotes from people and witnesses, but they must be in direct speech. You cannot be really seen that the newspaper is reporting that speech. For it to be truthful, it needs to be in speech marks and be in the exact words of the person. And as always, usually newspaper reports are in columns. It helps the reader to understand the order of how the article has been written. So on the next slide is an original article that I found, taken from the Morning Post, dated the 8th of May 1913. And it tells of an explosion at St Paul's Cathedral in London, and it was thought that the bomb had been planted by the suffragettes. Now this is on a true story, okay? It's a true article and it's based on true events. Okay, now although the article was written over 100 years ago, it still contains some of the features that we see in news reports today, and is an example of how far print media has come in terms of newspaper reporting and presentation of the news. So after reading the article, I would like you to complete 2 tasks in your books. Number 1, I want you to find the features of the newspaper report that we've talked about on the previous slide and give examples of that from the article. And number 2, make a list of the similarities and differences between this article and a modern newspaper report. So how are things the same and how are things different and how have things developed? Okay, so we're going to go to the article now, and then you can flip back to this to get your task again if you need to. Okay, so here is our article, and this is an original article that I have found from News Archives. Bomb at St Paul's. Unsuccessful attempt to wreck chancel. Supposed suffragist outrage. An explosive machine was found near the Bishop's Throne in the chancel of St. Paul's Cathedral yesterday morning, a few minutes prior to the celebration of Holy Communion, and there is no doubt in the minds of the authorities that the contrivance was designed and placed there by someone associated with the militant suffragist movement. The bomb, as it is described by the police, was carefully wrapped in brown paper and in part of a recent issue of the militant newspaper, The Suffragette. An expert stated that while such a bomb as that found at St. Paul's would have done relatively little damage to the building because of the great air spaces which exist within it, a similar machine in Westminster Abbey, owing to the crowded condition there, due to the many memorials and the form of the interior, might result in irreparable injury to the historic structure. Okay. So there is a picture as well of the bomb site of St. Paul's Cathedral and the damage that happened there. And underneath is a caption, bomb damage at St. Paul's Cathedral after suspected suffragette attack. So I want you to look at this article and find the features, and then I want you to compare the reporting of this news compared to a newspaper report today. Okay, so you can pause the video here, or you can go back to the previous slide and have a look at that task. Right, so I'm hoping that you really enjoyed that task and have not only learned how to identify the features of a newspaper report, but also to compare how print media has changed over time. I would love to see what you thought of this article. I really enjoyed researching and finding out more information about the suffragettes and finding lots and lots of old newspaper archives and stories. There is a lot of material out there about the suffragettes. And as an extra challenge, I would love for you to go online and see if you can find any other articles regarding the suffragettes, and there are lots. And I want you to send them in to the Year 6 email address or message us on the blog. Now, we are going to be giving out class charts points to the children that are doing exceptionally well, and there are a lot of you on my list already. So keep going, keep working hard, and I will see you on Monday.